What's the best advice that you can give to a student that's looking to start a business?
Ask for forgiveness, not permission. If you've got an idea, right, jump in, be brave, take a step forward, go and talk to the people who you need to talk to understand that more. Don't ask, can I do that? And then wait for somebody to tell you yes or no.
If you were a secondary school student again, what type of business would you look to start and why?
If you know a problem deeply because you've lived it, you have a much better chance at building the solution and being able to convince other people to pay for that solution.
So welcome to the Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast. My name is Richard Layton. I'm the entrepreneur in residence within the University of Liverpool Management School as part of the Brett Centre for Entrepreneurship. We're here this morning with Year 9 in UTC, the studio, in the Baltic Triangle, part of the competitions class. That's an extracurricular activity that supports students to work on challenges. Thanks to Mr. Carey, the sector skills champion within the school that not only supports the Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast, but also the Enterprise Education in Secondary Schools programme that we run. Our two pupils who will be interviewing our entrepreneur this morning are Laura Lai and Melina. And our entrepreneur, who is a serial entrepreneur, is Carl Wong. And I'll now hand it over to the pupils to ask the questions.
What do you do and how long have you run the business for?
Morning everybody. Right, so I've spent my adult career in consumer insight, market research, understanding what makes customers tick. So I did that for when I was in my 20s, and then I did that in big business, large companies, and then I left and I set up my own market research agency. And the big companies basically paid us to help them understand their customers. And then I set up a technology business in 2014 called LivingLens. LivingLens was a video technology business that allowed you to, instead of filling in a survey, you could just say what you thought on video, on your phone, or on kiosks and stuff. Just say what you thought very quickly about how you felt about product or service. And then we did some cool stuff. So we basically did speech to text. Before that was a really common thing. We did emotional facial recognition, and we did object and context recognition. So we turned that video into a data set. That allowed us to tell stories really fast, because getting from loads of video to the interesting stuff in video is really heavy. It's hard work. It takes a lot of time and energy. We could do that super fast, and then we can also take all of that video and tell you what all of your customers were thinking. It's a piece of cool kit. We built that from 2014, and in 2020 we sold that to one of our customers for quite a lot of money. Our customers were basically the world's biggest companies, including Unilever. They were one of our main customers, but companies like Airbnb, Apple, lots of retail companies that you'll see when you go shopping, lots of car manufacturers. So to do that, we were headquartered in Liverpool, and we ended up having offices in London, Toronto and New York, and we had about 30 people. During building that business, we raised about £5 million in equity funding, where basically organisations or individuals give you money into your business in return for a share of your business. So everybody who invested in my business, they made money when we sold it. At the very beginning and that business was called LivingLens. At the very beginning of that journey in 2014, we managed to, when we didn't really know a great deal about how do you build a tech business and how do you fundraise to help you build that, we managed to hustle our way onto a thing called a Tech Accelerator, which is basically a program of like a structured project where you can learn lots of different things about entrepreneurship and specifically building a technology business and how to do that well, and introduce you to lots of people who had done that before, and also introduce you to some big businesses who could help you understand their problems. Understanding a problem deeply is one of the key things that you need to be able to do to build a business well. So they did that for us. They also invested £100,000 in LivingLens in return for a percentage of my business. And that, without that thing, it was called Collider, it was in London, and without that, we would never have been a success. So when we sold the business, my co-founder David and I, we decided, do you know what, Liverpool needs something like that. We had to go to London to find it. There's nothing like that in this part of the world. And so I now am the non-executive chair. So that means basically I'm part of a small group of people who help the people who are doing the real jobs, when I'm part of a small group of people who built Baltic Ventures. Baltic Ventures is sort of a bit like that thing, Collider, that I described. To help you get your head around it, it's basically like a much better version of Dragon's Den. So that's what we do. We invite lots of businesses, some of which are in Merseyside, lots of which aren't, to apply to be part of our programme. And so every year, this is our third year, we invest in about 10 businesses, and then we wrap a load of skill and people and experience around them to help them make less mistakes than we all did and to go faster. And then we try and help them fundraise, because quite often to build particularly a technology business, you need a fair amount of money. And that's because you need to build this product before you get customers who are paying you revenue to use that product. So right now, I run Baltic Ventures with my wonderful team, and it's loads of fun, and you get to meet loads of people who are building their own businesses and doing that very well. Okay.
Why did you decide to start Baltic Ventures as opposed to another type of business?
That's a good question. So, we could have just gone and built another technology business and done it again, like we did with LivingLens, although we had a lot of luck. The harder you work, the luckier you get, but we also had a lot of luck selling our business. But it's also such hard work, and actually, you get to the stage where I don't really need more money. I don't need more stuff. What I want to do is be able to help other people succeed, particularly if you've got that drive and energy and passion and you're working really hard. I want to help other people build businesses, and we made loads of mistakes when we built our business. And they're pretty common mistakes. Or indeed, we learned loads when we did it, and passing that learning on and helping other people build their business is something that we thought would be really cool and interesting to do.
What were you like in secondary school, and were you entrepreneurial as a student?
So my family grew up in Knowsley. I went to school in Huyton. We didn't really have very much money when we were kids. We didn't have a car. A lot of my mates' parents were just either working very hard in, my mum worked in the pub, my dad worked in a factory. Some of my friends' parents didn't have jobs, it's that type of thing. So I'm answering the second part first. So I was entrepreneurial, although I had no idea that that's what I was. I didn't even know what that word meant. I was entrepreneurial because I was skint, and I wanted to have some money in my pocket. So I bought and sold sweets, I washed cars, I
blagged the paper round when I was 12, even though you'd had to be 14. I then negotiated with the other kids to get the paper round for the big houses up the road. So even though that was a bit of a drag because you had to carry all the big papers that they wanted rather than, you know, the papers that my mum and dad would read or whatever, you got big tips at Christmas. When I got a bit older, there was a business park down the road, and me and my mate used to go and, this is a bit weird, but buy and sell industrial light bulbs, fluorescent tubing. There's a longer story in that, but we did that because we saw that there was an opportunity. So yes, I was entrepreneurial. I was entrepreneurial because I wanted money in my pocket and trying to understand where demand was or what problems were was something that we put time into. What was it like at school? I was pretty switched on at school. I was pretty good academically, but I wasn't massively into school. I went to a school where if you were bright, and that was relatively well known, you got a hard time about that. I played football, and I was all right at football, so I sort of got away with it a little bit. And I hung around with some people who could sort of had my back a bit as well. But I was into learning, and most of the time I stayed in school doing that.
What were your favourite subjects and what did you like best about school?
What I liked best about school was, and this is something that you sort of realise when you get older, is spending every day with my mates and having a laugh and working out who I was, really, which takes time. I was a bit of a maths geek. Maths was my strongest subject, and I was really into it, but I was also really into storytelling. I was into English as well. I think I also liked, my school, we had this thing, which is sort of a bit like something that you do. Once a year, there might have been a small group of students who were picked to do this thing called the Power Games, which is where you were problem solving in a real environment and you were competing against other schools. It was actually, and the finals of it were on TV as well, which was quite cool. That was probably my favourite thing, and I would have said like business studies, but it wasn't practical enough for me. It was more too classroom based, but yeah, maths was really my thing, I think.
What could school have done to encourage or support you and others into entrepreneurship more?
Well, to be honest, I absolutely love what you guys are doing. Like, get a project, break it apart, have a goal to try and solve a problem, understand how you're going to do that practically, get stuck in with it. That's a skill that you can go and use in the real world. That's a skill. If you were in a business tomorrow working with other adults, what could you do that would be helpful? Actually, you're learning. How do I do my research? How do I understand what a problem is? How do I understand what is already out there in the world to solve this? How do I learn skills, particularly technical skills, to be able to help solve that problem or build solutions with other people? I would love my school to have had much more of that. And not just in the area of business, in each of those areas where, all right, if you're going to take a subject, how does that apply in the real world? What type of roles and jobs is that helpful in? And let's define a project where we could really try and learn some of those real world skills to develop ourselves. That would have been awesome.
Did you go to sixth form in university after studying your GCSEs, and how did that help develop your entrepreneurial skills?
Yeah, so I did both of those things. My school didn't have a sixth form. It was a school in Knowsley, where there's about 150,000 people. It's quite a lot of people. And nowhere in Knowsley did a school exist where you could do A-levels at that time. And I went to school, I did my A-levels 32, 33 years ago, which is ages ago. Today, in Knowsley, there is no school where you can do an A-level. And that is something that needs to change. So I went to a sixth form college. I had to get 2 buses to get to this sixth form college in Cronton and Widnes. And they treated me like an adult. I could call the teacher by their first name. They didn't have a register. And I was not ready for that. And so half the time I wasn't there. I did my A-levels and I did okay at them. I could have done much, much better at them because with a bit of discipline and support and structure. But I did well enough to get a place at university. I should say as well, I didn't have any mates that I grew up with that were my mates type of thing who went to college, who did A-levels, or indeed who went to university. I did have some friends from school who went the same journey as me. There's about half a dozen of us from a year group of 300 who went and did A-levels. And yes, I went to university, and I got a place at the University of Leicester to do business economics. And that was absolutely incredible. Why was it incredible? It was incredible because for the first time in my entire life, I got to go to somewhere where beyond where the bus could take me. And it turns out the world is a massive place full of people with different experiences and ideas and passions, and I found my tribe a little bit, and the world became so much bigger, and my ambition became so much bigger as a consequence of it. And oh, by the way, I got a degree, but that was almost like the collateral benefit of it, going and living in another city and becoming an adult and meeting lots of interesting, cool people who to this day are still my very best friends. That was wonderful.
What did you do before starting Baltic Ventures? Did you work for anyone else or run any other alternatives or businesses, and what did you learn?
So, after I finished uni, I didn't yet have the confidence or indeed the knowledge really that I wanted to just build my own business, and also probably wouldn't have been the right time for me to do that. What I did is I went and like lots of other people around me, and I thought, well, they're doing it, so I should do it. I went and tried to get a job on a graduate training program for a big company, and that's what I did. I ended up getting a job in a huge financial services business called Royal & Son Alliance, RSA Group. Their part of them was headquartered in Liverpool. And I then spent 3 years basically doing lots of different jobs for 3, 4, 5 months all around that business in the UK and in Europe. And that helped me massively understand how a big business works. It's very complicated. There's so many moving parts, and the way they make decisions is much more complex than you might think, or certainly than I thought. So I did that, and then I ended up getting my first sort of proper job in that business in the sales and marketing function. And I did that for a while, and I got to understand what marketing and demand generation and brand building was about. And then within the big marketing function, there was a team called market research. And so I ended up getting a job in that because and that was because I really, really liked the idea of market research is about understanding what makes people tick. Why do people make those decisions? Those attitudes and behaviours that drive outcomes if we can deeply understand that, then actually you can do lots of different things, including building better products and services. So I spent time in that team, and then I ended up being in charge of that team. That team got bigger and bigger, and we were spending about £10 million a year understanding our customers, which is quite a lot of money, but it's not a massive amount of money when it comes to big business. So our overall marketing budget was about £200 million. Unilever, who I believe a lot of you are familiar with, their marketing budget is £8 billion a year, right? Which is a big number, right? It's the second biggest marketing budget in the world. First biggest marketing budget is Procter & Gamble, who are Unilever's main competitor. So in your house, right, you probably have at least 20 things in your house that those two companies make. You might have 100. Right? They are unbelievable at building brands. So I worked in that part of that big business, and I was in that big company in the end, and another one similar to it for like 10 years. And then I decided, right, we're spending all this money on trying to understand customers and the agencies that we're buying those services from. I now think I know how to do this really well. And I'm now brave enough to want to start my own business. But it took me a long time to be brave enough to do that and actually realise that that's what I wanted to do. So then I left and I set up my own market research agency called Curiosity. And that big company that I worked for, they were my first customer. And then I did that for 6 years and grew that pretty big, and then realised that actually, if you want to become... Actually, I looked at selling that business, and even though it was pretty successful, it probably wasn't worth it. Well, it wasn't worth as much as I hoped it would be. A services-driven business is valued in a traditional and different way to a technology-driven business. And that's when I focused upon, right, how do we evolve, how do we solve a problem that we know deeply about using technology? And that's when we started off building LivingLens. And LivingLens, as I said, is the business that we built over 5 or 6 years and then sold before we started Baltic Ventures.
What's the best advice that you can give to a student that's looking to start a business?
I don't know if your teachers will like this one, but ask for forgiveness, not permission. So what I mean by that is, if you've got an idea, right, jump in, be brave, right, take a step forward, go and talk to the people who you need to talk to understand that more. Don't ask, can I do that? And then wait for somebody to tell you yes or no. If it turns out that you've done something that maybe you shouldn't have done, then okay, you can ask for forgiveness then and learn from that. But the main thing about not just building a business, right, but being the best that you can be and the most successful you can be, that you want to be, is run at it. Is don't meekly wait for it to come to you, run at it. And be brave to do that. You need courage in you to do that. It's not easy doing it, but be proactive. So that's one, which is a bit sort of abstract. The other, though, is, right, and you're doing lots of this, right, work out how to use the tools that are going to make you helpful in the workplace quickly. And that's different in different workplaces, but things like knowing the AWS stack, I think some of you know about that, right? Knowing what that looks like, knowing how to build a website or investigate how you do that, like tools like Lovable, right? If you don't know Lovable, check it out. You build a website in 30 seconds. You don't have to have any coding experience whatsoever. Vibe coding will change the world. It already is starting to. Right? Learn how to use some of these tools. Learn how to build some content and put it out there on social media, which, to be honest, you're better than anybody in my generation, but being able to do that to drive an action, a call to action, is really useful. Understanding things like AWS, like there's Base 44 and Superbase. All these things are making it really easy. Cursor, tools that make it really easy to build stuff technically and get something out there in the world. So be able to do that and not rely upon somebody else to do that. And then you don't need anybody else to take those first steps forwards. You don't need anybody else to be helpful. Google Sheets, learn how to use that properly. Learn how to build a presentation in Canva or whatever the tool is that you're into. That'll do. That's quite a lot.
What are the plans for the Baltic Ventures in the future, and how do you believe you'll set up for any more businesses?
So far, we've invested in 30 businesses, and we've also supported in another program where the business is a little bit earlier stage and not quite ready for money. We've also supported another 30 in that. In the course of the next 4 or 5 years, I want those numbers to be much bigger, 100. I want us to be able to, over the course of the next 10 years, I want more and more people to feel that they can start their own business, that they can scale that up, and they have pathways to do that, support to do that, experienced people around them who can do that, and access to capital, access to money. And I want to support that getting much, much bigger and raising the bar for the technology and creative and digital sectors in this city. Will I set up any more businesses? Probably. But I like to do that now alongside other people. So there are 2 other businesses at the moment that I'm quite heavily involved in, but they have full-time founding teams who are building those, and I spend a little bit of time helping them build up those businesses. One of them is a quite cool drone AI business, and the other one is a sports data analytics business. Neither of them are at market yet. Hopefully, we'll get them both to market in the course of the next 3 or 4 months.
If you were a secondary school student again, what type of business would you look to start and why?
That's a good one. Right, so what I would do is, so if you know a problem deeply, and that's what we describe as domain expertise, right? If you know a problem deeply because you've lived it, you have a much, much better chance at building a solution and being able to convince other people to pay for that solution than if you don't have that experience. So where's your pain? Right? I don't know, is it a pain getting to school? Is the canteen what you want it to be? Are the extracurricular things what you want them to be? Where's the pain? And then if it's your pain, it's your mate's pain as well, and it's their mate's pain. So understand where that pain is, and then what is the solution for that pain? And it's not one solution, there'll be loads of different solutions. Try them. So I don't know what the answer to that is, right? But it's probably something around helping people either get to where they want to do that socially and without having to pay through their nose for an Uber, or what's going on in terms of tuck shop and canteen, that the thing that I want to buy and my friends want to buy isn't there. Where do I source that, and can I sell that? Am I allowed to do that? Might not be allowed to do that though. What stuff would I like to be able to do outside of school that I can't? How do we make that happen in a structure where we can make money over time? I don't know. What else? So understand the problem that you have deeply and that your mates share, and how do we solve that problem.
Yeah, that's really great. Thanks ever so much to Lorelei and Melina for asking the questions. And we'll now go to the audience to get some more questions for Carl.
I'm going to start us off,
Okay.
Carl, if that's okay. I'm going to bring us right back to one of your first answers about LivingLens, and you mentioned something about emotional video recognition.
Emotional recognition, yeah.
Emotional recognition. Can you explain a little bit? Because we have some technical students here, some people doing computer science and some people doing our T-level technical.
Cool.
And I've heard quite a lot about that, and I think it's quite interesting because there are companies, for example, who are using that to try and predict the mental health of their staff and stuff like that. So could you just explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's come on in leaps and bounds since we're using it. But essentially, if you imagine, right, if you arrange the shape of your face, you could put, it was 54 dots on your face, and the configuration of those dots would define what emotion that you're showing facially. So, you know, if your eyebrows are raised or if your corners of your mouth are turned down, that type of thing. If you put those dots on your face and then pull different expressions based upon how you're feeling, you would see those dots are arranged in different ways. And we use that with the degree of probability mapping to infer the emotional state of when somebody was giving feedback about their experience. So a lot of what we did was, so let's say, for example, Unilever. Right, so we did a lot of stuff for Unilever in the kitchen. And so let's say you bought a particular Unilever ingredient, mustard, or Hellman's mustard. Oh, sorry, not Hellman's mustard. English mustard. I think that's a Procter & Gamble one, actually. Well, let's say that one. And how did you find that? How would you describe the taste of it, for example? And some people would be like, "Oh, so nice," and it really, really like adds. And you could see the facial and not just their facial, but their tone. So that was the other aspect of it. We'll touch that in a second. You could see the tone lift and the face lift. Other people were like, "Oh, I really don't like it. It's so strong." And and at that point, we could say that person has a deep frustration or not an anger, but some sort of dissatisfaction. When you're getting that, and the same with the tonal, so the modulation of the wavelength of what people are talking about and how they talk, it really goes up and down based on how you're feeling. Your tone will be different when you're happy, or particularly when you're angry or you're cross. So when you're collecting 25,000 of those, we could hone in immediately on here are the points of emotional peak. And we could use our platform to basically immediately create a package. Here's a 3-minute package of what that is. And then from the trend in what's being said, here's the frequency of that mention and the veracity of that mention. We couldn't scale tonal. We could scale facial because everybody over the world has the same sort of facial expressions when they're happy, sad, etc. Ish. That's not strictly true, but ish. But tonal's completely different. Different cultures are completely different. People in America are much bigger, much sort of louder in their expressions. The entire calibration is different. People in Asia, and it's different within Asia, are much more subdued and picking up. Discrepancies there are different. The Baltics, Scandinavia, that neck of the woods, again, there is a different inference to emotional expression. So, yeah, data at scale.
Has anyone else got a question?
In your Face ID business, did you code in? If so, what languages to code in?
Did I code?
Yeah, and what
You know
languages do you use?
So I have never written a line of code in my life. Right? My co-founder, David, neither is he. That is unusual. It's unusual to have two co-founders in a tech business that don't code. What we're quite good at is building teams. So, no, we didn't code. A Vibe code a bit now. We did our own. We learned how to wireframe. Wireframe is basically building a website at a high level, like it's a presentation, but knowing what is the journey of a customer, what are the buttons going to do when you click on them, how do we get somebody to go through a process. So we did all of that lot ourselves, and then we found a freelancer who would build that as cheaply as possible, and then we started to build our own teams out around that lot and we start off with bringing one guy in who is, was part of our senior team, who could code and could translate our thinking into building out the infrastructure.
Okay, we'll move to the final part. Thanks ever so much for the questions. So we have a couple of closing traditions on the Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast. Our first closing tradition is to Simon squib you and ask you, what's your dream?
Got 2 dreams, I'd say. I'd like to go to space. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. I'm not an astronaut, but I would like to go to space. I might do that one day. Not as an astronaut, but as a space tourist. Although my wife thinks that that's ridiculous. My other dream, which is more like my work dream, is so I started working around here on Jamaica Street in 2014, and there were a few tech businesses around here, but not loads. Now there's 20 times that. I want there to be 500 times that. I want this to be an absolute hub and buzz, the centre of the north of England's tech, creative, digital energy. And I want all of you, if you choose to be able to, in this city, work for scale up some very successful businesses who are making a massive splash in the world, and that there's capital and skill and private and public sector support to enable that. That's my other dream.
I think that's our first intergalactic dream that we've had on the Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast, so that's really brilliant. And equally, obviously, the other dream that you spoke about is something that you're proactively working on and doing at the moment, and you've achieved so much, not only as an entrepreneur, but equally with Baltic Ventures, helping and supporting other tech entrepreneurs to start up and scale their businesses. So you've got this far, and I'm very sure that you'll continue to grow, and hopefully Liverpool can become a real powerhouse and a hub for not only the North, but the UK and even the world for business and entrepreneurship.
It's nice to have a dream, but I prefer to have a goal. If you make your dream a goal and then turn that into a plan, you've got a better chance of making it happen.
That's very true. Our final tradition on the Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast is to Stephen Bartlett you. So we've got a couple of packs of the Diary of a CEO conversation cards. If one of you would like to grab one of the decks and select a card out and ask Carl the final question.
What are the failures that you change the most?
What are the failures that I would change the most? So I reckon business-wise, we made too many mistakes trying to crack America. And we tried to hire people in that part of the world. I'm a big believer in trusting your own gut. But culturally, but if you're in a different culture, it's hard to do that. So we wasted so much time and energy and money trying to build a team. And then what we ended up doing finally was going there ourselves and spending much more time there ourselves. I wish we would have done that much faster and trusted ourselves more to do that. That's a rubbish answer. Another one is I wish I would have been braver when I was in my 20s to maybe start doing my own thing quicker. But I don't tend to look back. I don't really have any regrets. I tend to look forwards. Regrets are things that you carry with that are heavy. Most of the things that we do in terms of mistakes are brilliant learning for the future. Just don't do them again.
Yeah, that's very true. Don't learn from your mistakes and try not to repeat them again. So thank you ever so much for Lorelei and Melina for asking the questions today. Thank you ever so much for Carl Wong for coming in to not only speak about Baltic Ventures, but other entrepreneurial initiatives and businesses that he's set up before. Thanks again to Mr. Carey, Sector Skills Champion here at UTC, the studio in the Baltic Triangle. Thanks also goes to Paul Brett for his support at the Brett Centre for Entrepreneurship, as well as Sir Peter Rigby for his generosity to support not only the Kids Interview Entrepreneurs podcast, but the Enterprise Education in Secondary Schools programme as well. Thanks ever so much for your time and attention as always, and we look forward to seeing you in the future in another episode. Take care for now. There we go. We did it.